Okay, I want to graph this function. It's f of x is equal to the cube root of x minus 5 minus 2. Let's take us a minute or two to look at what we mean by cube root. Let's use the cube root of 8. What does that mean? Well, I'm looking for a number that when I raise it to the third power, I get 8. So that would be 2. And like I said, that's the reason that's true is because 2 to the third power is equal to 8. I could also do the cube root of a negative 8. What number cubed is a negative 8? Well, that would be negative 2. Because if I take a negative 2 and raise it to the third power, I'm going to get a negative 8. It's okay to have a negative under a cube root. You might remember that you cannot have a negative under a square root, but a cube root can take a negative. Alright, let's do a couple more. I want to do the cube root of, 1. The cube root of 1 is what number cubed, what number raised to the third power would be 1? Well, 1 would be, right? If I take 1 cubed, I'm going to get 1. Another one, an easy one, would be the cube root of 0. What would that be? What do I raise to the third power to get 0? Well, 0 would work. 0, because 0 to the third power would equal to 0. Now, the reason I'm going through all this is that when I evaluate this function, I want to make sure that I plug in x values and do that carefully so that when I evaluate this cube root, I end up with, underneath this radical, I end up with either 8 or 1 or 0, something small, and something that will turn out not to be a decimal when I take the cube root of it. So let's plug in x values. For example, let's say I want to plug in an x value that turns the x minus 5 to 0, so that I end up with a 0 under that radical. Well, if we plug in 5 for x, then the y value is going to be, it's going to be the cube root of 5 minus 5 minus 2. Well, 5 minus 5 is 0. So I've got the cube root of 0 minus 2. Well, the cube root of 0 is 0, so 0 minus 2, which is negative 2. So here is one point we can plot 5, negative 2. But I need a second point. So what can we plug in for x that will give us, underneath the radical, a nice easy number to work with? Let's say I want to end up with a 1 under that radical. Well, if we plug in 6 for x, then we would have y is equal to the cube root of 6 minus 5, then minus 2. Well, the cube root of 6 minus 5 would be the cube root of 1. 6 minus 5 is 1. And the cube root of 1 is 1. And 1 minus 2 would be a negative 1. So here are 2 points that I can plot and draw the graph. So let's do the first one, 5, negative 2. So I'm going to grab this point right here and move it to 5, negative 2. There it is. And then I'm going to get the next point, and it's got to be 6, negative 1. Right, so let me see if I can grab it there. Yes, so 6, negative 1. Now remember, if you want to make sure you're in the right spot, just click on the point and it'll bring up the ordered pair. That one's correct. That one's correct. So let's hit submit. And it should tell us we did it right. So